Hi. Welcome to my bed. This video is going to be a very comfy, cozy chit chat recapping quarter one. I wanted to go over some really great books, not so great books, and overall standout books that made an impression on me from the months of January to March. I cannot believe that we are already in the middle of April as I'm filming this. The year is literally flying by. It's unreal. I'm not going to be, unfortunately, recapping every single book that I read in the past 3 months because I read 72 books. I know it's an absurd amount of books, but January and February are usually really slow months for me at work, which means I have nothing but time to read. I don't have as many events and I don't travel as much in those 2 months. Once March hit, work has been nonstop ever since, and it will continue on until the end of the year. As it stands, I've read 29 books in January, 26 in February, and 17 in March. You can see already just through the numbers that my reading has slowed down a bit as the months go on because work has started to pick up. And now that we are in the middle of April, I believe it's April 17th, I've only read 9 books. Things are slowing down significantly, which I'm okay with. Reading that many books in 3 months is insane. Let's get on to some stats. These are all from Storygraph. This is my first year using Storygraph, and I cannot believe I have never used Storygraph before this year. I don't know what I was thinking, only using Goodreads. I love Storygraph. I love being able to see all of my stats broken down by category. Let's go through them. So, general numbers. I've read 72 books. That's 25,138 pages. I don't know if the pages include the hours that I've listened to on audiobook. That's the figure I have. Page number count for the books that I've read. 32% have been less than 300 pages. 57% were 300 to 499 pages, and 11% of my books have been 500 pages and more. I'm on a journey to finish as many series as I possibly can this year, a lot of them being fantasy books. I see the number of 500 pages and up increasing by the end of the year. I've read 97% fiction and 3% nonfiction. This year, I've actually gone back to my roots and started reaching for more history books. History was my favorite subject in school, and I decided to tap back into that part of me that loved history and venture out of my comfort zone and pick up a few history books that I found at bookstores that I seemed genuinely interested in. So far, the one that I have read, I absolutely loved, and I'll talk about it later, but I'm having a great time with the nonfiction books that I have read so far. In terms of genres, my top genres pretty much sum up the usual genres that I read. Romance and fantasy being the top 2, followed by contemporary fiction. And I actually like that mystery and thriller have made it up into my top genres because up until I want to say last year, those two weren't really genres that I read. And they weren't genres that I thought I would like. But last year, I think because I had met a friend who was really into mystery thrillers, I started to get into them, and now I really enjoy a good mystery thriller book. These stats are what I am most happy and proud of, and that is the format stat. I have read 28% books through audio, 31% through digital, and 42% through physical. I am so proud of myself because one of my biggest goals this year was to read less audiobooks and read more physical books, whether that be with an actual physical book or an ebook. My average star rating is 3.83, which I consider to be a very great rating. And to me, it is a reflection of the fact that I'm getting a lot better at knowing what my reading tastes are, knowing what books I will like and have a good time with and enjoy rather than not. Those are all the stats. that I have for you. Now we can get into the books. Like I said, I won't be going through every single 72 books because that would be insane and I would be sitting here until 3 in the morning. I'm going to highlight some really fantastic books that have made it onto my top reads of the year already. Some books that were disappointing and I didn't enjoy at all. And then some standout ones that I can vividly remember for one reason or another. So yeah, this is kind of like the highlight reel of the past 3 months. I have a feeling that my quarter 2, I might be able to swing actually wrapping up every single book because I don't think I will be reading anywhere close to 72 books in the next 3 months, or at least I'm hoping I don't. Let's get into the books that I absolutely loved from January to March. One of the first books that I read this year that was a 5-star out the gate, and it was also an ARC that I received. So this book isn't even out yet. It doesn't come out until May. That book is My Friends by Fredrik Backman. I did a video recapping ARCs that I've already read, so I go into depth into this book and a few more others that I'm going to mention. So I will link that video because I'm not going to really summarize most of these books. I'll give you a brief overview, but for the most part, I really just want to recap my thoughts and feelings on them. This book, oh my god. I could not have imagined starting the year off any better than with this book. I'm calling it right now that it is going to remain one of my top books of the year by the end of the year. Like, I'm calling it right now because this book was incredible. In short, this book was about friendship, the love that friendships bring and how it saves your life, and also art and the love that art brings and how art can save your life. It was wholesome, emotional, tender, and gut-wrenching in the best possible way. Backman is one of the best storytellers, and this book is a true testament to that. It was 5-star perfection and I cannot recommend it enough. This book, you simply must read it. The next book is Lie With Me by Philippe Besson. This is a book translated from French. This short novel about 2 gay boys in 1980s France ruined me, but for the better. Their love was passionate yet devastating. There were moments of tenderness and sheer despair. I genuinely don't think I could ever read this again, especially after that ending, which was diabolical, by the way. But wow. Such a moving story to have brought out so much emotion in me in this amount of time. Unreal. I want to read a quote that pretty much captures the entire feeling of this book, okay? This feeling of love, it transports me. It makes me happy. At the same time, it consumes me and makes me miserable, the way all impossible loves are miserable. Yeah, that's pretty much this fucking book. 5 out of 5 stars. Bat Eater by Kylie Lee Baker. This was actually an ARC that I received. I received the ALC. This book doesn't come out in the US until the end of April, but it's already out in the UK, which is why I already purchased it, and also because this cover eats. The US cover doesn't even come close to this. This is sort of a horror thriller novel centering around Cora Zhang, who is traumatized by the death of her sister after she watched her sister get pushed in front of a train, then run over, and the culprit who did it ran away screaming, "Bat Eater." This story takes place at the height of the COVID-19 pandemic, when Asian and Asian American hate was at its peak. This was very triggering at times, as you can imagine. It tackles a very heavy topic and feelings I think many of us can relate to. The author also does a great job of creating a very eerie and unsettling atmosphere around the brutal deaths that are happening in this book. Lots of body gore and horror in this book that I wasn't really expecting, but I don't get squeamish around those things, so if you do, just know that there's a lot of it in this book. I also really recommend the audiobook because it just elevates the atmosphere of this book. The narrator does a fantastic job of capturing everything and bringing this story to life. Very haunting and horrifying. I truly couldn't stop listening, and if I was physically reading this, I wouldn't be able to put it down. Really great book, 5 out of 5 stars. The next book, it is actually so relevant to right now because of what I compare it to and what a lot of people have compared it to, and that is Immaculate Conception by Ling Ling Huang. This book, again, isn't out yet. It comes out, I believe, in May. I read an arc of it. Thank you again, NetGalley. To sum up in one sentence what this book is, it is like reading an episode of Black Mirror. That is one of my favorite shows of all time. The new season just came out. That's a whole other video I could get into, but this book captures the relationship and destructiveness of weaving technology and art together. Again, I will link my ARC video where I recap this book and go more in depth about what the book is about, but just know that by the end of this book, you will feel just as uncomfortable and unsettled as you would finishing an episode of Black Mirror, okay? 5 out of 5 fucking stars. This, I also think, will end up being one of the top books that I read for the year. Okay, those first books were kind of heavy. On to more lighthearted books. First Time Caller. Oh my god, I was not expecting this to be as good as it was. My friends got me this beautiful special edition from the UK. I'm absolutely obsessed with it. This is a romance between Aiden, who is a radio show host, and Lucy, who is a car mechanic. I love that they have such normal jobs and such different jobs, and they felt like real people in this book. The radio show that Aiden works for ends up starting this segment where Aiden helps Lucy find love, and then of course they fall in love together. I've DNF'd books from this author before. Did I even say who it's by? It's by B.K. Borson. I DNF'd her Love Light Farm series before because it just was not it for me. I didn't have any expectations going into this because I didn't think I was gonna like it. Girl, I loved it. It surprised me how sweet and heartwarming the romance and the characters were. Not just the main characters, but even the side characters who are getting their own book. By the way, B.K. Borson also mentioned that these books were inspired by the Nora Ephron movies. I believe this one is inspired by Sleepless in Seattle. Is that what it is? Yeah, Sleepless in Seattle. And the next book in the series is going to be inspired by When Harry Met Sally, which is one of my, if not my favorite movie of all time. I loved this book so much. That's all I have to say. 5 out of 5 stars. Okay, Go Luck Yourself by Sarah Rash. The Prince of Christmas falls in love with the Prince of St. Patrick's Day. You heard that right. This is a just really fun romp of a romantasy in a magical world where all of the holidays have royal families. In this, we follow the brother from the first book, which was A Nightmare Before Christmas. That book was about the prince who is now the king of Christmas, and this is his brother, who's now the prince of Christmas, whose name is Chris. Chris is going to Lachlan's court in Ireland to figure out which person in Lachlan's court is stealing the magic of Christmas. Sarah has created such an interesting and truly entertaining world with the royal families and how the magic works in this, and the politics too within the different courts and the royal families is so interesting. And I genuinely was like, who did it? And this was a lot more emotional than I expected it to be. And the narrator, because I listened to the audiobook, oh my god, the way that his voice would crack and break when these characters were in a very heightened emotional state, I was brought to tears. I'm gonna be honest, this book brought me to tears. This was 5 out of 5 gay stars. All right, the next book is the nonfiction book that I was talking to you guys about that I thoroughly had a great time with, and that's Girly Drinks by Mallory O'Meara. This was actually a recommendation from one of my really good friends. The fact that I was even interested in a nonfiction history book to begin with is insane, and furthermore, giving it a 5 out of 5 stars, I never thought I'd see the day. To put it plainly, Girly Drinks is a world history of women and alcohol, so this book follows several different women in history from the beginning of time up until current day across the entire globe, and how they laid the foundation and shaped the backbone of the alcohol industry. And then of course, it shows you how the patriarchy has tried to eradicate women from the alcohol industry altogether. But the facts don't lie, honey. Modern drinking is what it is today because of women. Read this, educate yourself. Honestly, have a drink while you read it. This was 5 out of 5 stars, and I'm so excited to read more history books. If they're this much fun, I don't know, I might be a history girly by the end of the year. All right, now that I've talked about great books, let's talk about the not so great books that I've read. There aren't that many, which again is really great because that means that I'm reading more books that I love than books that I don't. Boys with Sharp Teeth by Jenny Howell. I had high expectations for this. I should not have, because it is a YA, but it was dark academia, and I will read anything that is even remotely adjacent to dark academia, okay? But this was like secret history fan fiction, and I mean that with the utmost disrespect. I mean, this tried to be so many different things. It tried to be philosophical, it tried to be dark, and there was a fantastical, magical element to it that didn't quite make sense or really add anything to the story. If anything, it made it more convoluted. Oh my god, the writing dragged on forever. This was so slow. The pacing was incredibly slow, and I was just bored by the end of it. So yeah, 1 star. I hated the entire reading experience of this, and that's that. Our Infinite Fates by Laura Stevens. Similarly to Boys with Sharp Teeth, it's a YA. I'm not a YA person after this. I realized that I made my mistake. I knew that I wasn't a YA person. These 2 books solidified it, but Our Infinite Fates I was a bit more excited for, because it's basically these 2 souls that get reincarnated, and in every lifetime they kill each other by their 18th birthday. That sounds iconic. If it was adult, probably would have been better. This was just very repetitive, and the story didn't progress anywhere. The author, I think, reached too far and tried to do too many things and didn't execute any of them well. This got 2 stars because I was interested in some of it, but ultimately a waste of my time. Mask of the Deer Woman. This is about a half indigenous woman who goes back to the reservation that her father is from to become their marshal, which is their only form of authority or law enforcement on the reservation. And immediately she picks up the case of a missing young indigenous woman, which unravels more cases of missing indigenous women from this reservation. And there is, in real life, an epidemic of missing and murdered indigenous women. And so I wanted to read it because I want to educate myself more on that topic and read more media on that. But oh my god, this book was really bad, mainly because of the main character. The main character was drunk or high in nearly every scene that she was in, including the parts where she is investigating the murders and interrogating other people. She was a bully. Every time someone even looked at her the wrong way, she would reach for her gun. Drunk? Oh. And when the 3rd act happened and she finally confronted the kidnappers or the killer of these young women, she could barely stand to defend herself because she was drunk. Granted, she had lost her own daughter and she was still grieving through that. But girl, if you're still grieving your daughter and you are coping with drugs and alcohol, I don't know, maybe don't sign up for law enforcement? Like, what? Anyway, I felt like this tackled a very serious problem with a very not so serious main character, and then it made me not even really care about the story anymore, which is disheartening because this is a very serious topic. That character, I can't. So 2 stars. Now we move on to the standouts. These are books that stand out for different reasons, whether because they were shocking or surprising, or I just wasn't expecting the books to be what they are, and they all have various ratings. I'm going to rapid fire them because this video is already going to be way too long. And also because I have quite a few to go through. But I wanted to acknowledge these books and give them some attention because after this video, I probably won't be talking about them as much anymore. First is Gloria by Brandon Jacobs Jenkins. This is actually a play that was recommended by Uncarly, who's one of my favorite YouTubers. She read this, I believe, either last year or the year before, and it was one of her top reads. I've never really even thought about reading plays or been interested in reading plays, but when she described the premise of it, I thought, wait, that sounds crazy. This is a story about coworkers in an office who are going through it. None of them are happy. Very mundane life. They all talk about this one coworker who isn't there. Then she shows up, and I don't want to spoil it, but my jaw was on the fucking floor. Uncarly did not disappoint. This was crazy. And then the aftermath of that traumatic event that happens, wow. The fact that this is, I mean, look how short this is. I can't even imagine having seen this acted out on stage. Please check your trigger warnings for this. This is not for the faint of heart. Wow, 5 out of 5 stars. Hearing Red by Nicole Mazer. Think a dystopian world with zombies like The Walking Dead and the two main characters, Sapphic. Yeah. Tension, high. Stakes, high. Action, high. Yeah, this was so good. I could not put this down. I wanted to know what was going to happen to these characters, to their families, to their lives. I was on the edge of my seat the entire time, but this was so good. And this was hot. And this was a slow burn too. Delicious. I rated this 4 out of 5 stars. The next book I'm sure you've seen everywhere, and you're probably sick of seeing it and hearing about it, but I'm sorry, I have to talk about it, okay? The Favorites by Lane Fargo. Holy shit. 2 ice skaters obsessed with each other, and the drama and chaos of the professional ice skating world. Was this the best book I've ever read? No. Did I like everything about this book? No. Did I like the characters? Not that much. Did I eat this up in 2 days? Absolutely. Absolutely. Sorry to say, Lane Fargo, she knows how to keep you on the edge of your seat. She knows how to keep you interested. She knows that we like a messy, messy, messy time. And that's exactly what this was. Ate it up. 4 stars. Under Your Scars by Ariel N. Anderson. This is a 660-page dark romance book that I fully read from front to back. Okay, I read this because I wanted a dark romance book that was different than all of the ones that I have already read and the ones that are really popular. I saw this circulating and a lot of people talking about how this is insane and totally different than anything they've ever read, and they were correct. If you've read this book, oh my god, I need you to message me, because what the fuck? This honestly felt like a dark romance Batman retelling, because you have a girl who is saved from being raped in an alleyway by a street vigilante, Batman basically. Because he saves her, he ends up becoming obsessed with her and starts stalking her. Then at her job at this like law firm, I think, the owner of the company comes in and he's this rich hot billionaire. She ends up becoming his assistant. I think you kind of know where this is going, right? You don't. You absolutely fucking don't know where it's going, because I thought I did, and it went nowhere I thought it was going to go. Okay, and the ending, I've never read an ending that sick, that twisted, that fucked up. This book left me speechless. This was insane. I rated this book 3.5 stars. I will be buying a physical copy. I've read it on my Kindle. I actually kind of want to round it up to 4 stars. The more I think about it, yeah, it's a 4-star read, and I don't recommend it. Red Rabbit by Devin Winters. Another dark romance that is absolutely fucking unhinged and insane. And again, unlike anything I'd ever read. You start off with these 2 strangers, Kaylin, who, it's crazy that's her name because that's my name, and Graham, who meet on a plane. That plane crashes, and they're the only 2 survivors. And they're surviving out in the wilderness, and then Kaylin gets kidnapped. Yeah, she gets kidnapped, and she gets sold. And again, you think you know where this is going. Baby, you have no idea. No idea. I was distraught when I read this. Yeah, where it ended up by the end of the book, there was no way I could have predicted that. There was no way I could have even guessed that that's where it would end up. I rated this 3.75 stars. Again, now that I'm thinking about it, I might round it up to a 4, because wow. Honestly, those 2 books really gave me what I was looking for. I really had never read dark romances like them before. The last of my standouts, Little Rot by Akwaeke Emezi. This author's brain, unlike anything I've ever seen. Truly the trials and tribulations that she put her main characters through. They're in my thoughts and prayers. Wow. I was gagged. You follow a cast of characters in the underbelly of Nigeria. I truly can't tell you anything more without spoiling the entire thing. Also, check your trigger warnings. Do not go in blind. Check your trigger warnings, because bitch, there are a lot. But all I can say is, similar to the last 2, could not have predicted half of the things that went on in that book. Could not. I rated it 2.75 just because I didn't like a single character. I didn't like the ending. I didn't like the way that any of their stories played out. That's just personal preference. And some of this book too felt like kind of just for shock factor, really. But still, I still love Okoye. Love their work, love their writing, love their brain. I will continue to read their work. This book was just, oh my god. Oh my god. Lastly, I wanted to go over some series that I have completed, because one of my goals this year, like I said earlier, was to complete as many series as I possibly can. First series I want to talk about. I reread the entire Mediator series by Meg Cabot, and I buddy read it with one of my dear friends as well. I read all 6 books in the original series. There is a time skip with 2 additional books, but I didn't read those. This is basically about a 16-year-old girl named Suze who moves to Carmel up here in Northern California from New York City with her new family. Her mom remarried. She has 3 stepbrothers. She starts going to a Catholic high school, and she's a mediator. She sees ghosts, she sees spirits, and every book is a different case where she helps and guides whatever spirit back to where they belong. She falls in love with one of the ghosts that lives in her house, and Suze acts exactly the way you would expect a 16-year-old girl to act in a YA book written back in 2005. Yeah, I read this when I was in middle school. The only thing I remembered about it was that the main character falls in love with a ghost and he somehow turns human so that they can be together in real life. And I wanted to reread this because I needed to remember how that happened and how that was even possible. But also I wanted to reread my childhood books this year, and I was nostalgic for all the books that made me fall in love with reading. So I had a really fun time with this. Would not recommend reading this for the first time because this is very outdated. But if you have read this before when you were younger, give it a try again. It's really fun. Again, very outdated in terms of the jokes and just the culture of the early 2000s, but I had a really great time. I also finished the Edge of Darkness series by Lee Rivers, which is a dark romance series. This follows Cade and Stacy, who have that great love where it's them or no one else. You know, like they are it for each other. They're soulmates. This was a dark romance series that I didn't have high expectations for, but this blew my mind with just how dark it was. I was not expecting it to be this dark, and I ate it up. Overall, I gave this series a 4 stars. I did feel like, especially in book 2 and 3, it dragged on for a long time and there were way too many flashbacks for my taste, but I still really enjoyed this series. The last series that I will talk about in this video that I completed was the Mistborn trilogy by Brandon Sanderson. This is the year of Sanderson. Me and my friend are buddy reading all of the Sanderson books. We started with this Mistborn trilogy. This was without a doubt a 5 out of 5 star series. This was incredible. I loved every single thing about this series. The characters, the world building, the magic system, the plot, the twist and fucking turns, the way that this book connected from where this started to where it ended. Genius. The man is a genius. This is a perfect example of what great fantasy storytelling is, in my opinion, and I absolutely loved this trilogy. This is one of my favorite fantasy series of all time. I can't wait to continue on. We're reading Warbreaker next, and then we're moving on to the Stormlight Archives and somehow finishing that within the year. We'll see. But this was an infinity out of 5 stars. This was perfection. Okay, that is the end of this video. Those are all the books that I am highlighting that I've read from January to March. Thank you for watching my Q1 recap. I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!